If someone showed up in my room a year ago and they told me, hey, in 2017, Nintendo's new console is going to put them back on the map with their most impressive graphics for Nintendo standards, you'll also be able to take this console with you anywhere on the go. Oh, and within the first year, go ahead and expect groundbreaking Zelda and Mario titles for the Switch. And Dark Souls has been teased for this console. I almost forgot to mention, this is going to be the cheapest console in the gaming market for 2017. I would have told them, who are you? What are you doing in my house? Get out! It's 3 a.m. And I still would not have believed them. But here we are 9 months later with the Nintendo Switch. I'm going to bring you folks my updated review on Nintendo's latest console. Normally there'd be an intro after this, but I accidentally deleted the only video clip I have of it, so we don't have that. I understand time is short, so a TLDR of this review, go out and buy a Switch. It's the best console I've ever owned, seriously. I sold my PS4 for more Switch titles, and I don't regret it for one moment. Real quick, this line was written in before the Game Awards, after seeing that awesome trailer for Death Stranding, not to mention a potential sequel to Bloodborne, and that new Spider-Man game. I regret this decision immensely. Sell your consoles at your own risk. Anyways, let's get back into the review. The dock had never been an issue for me. I thought the size was justified at the time, and I haven't experienced any scratches with my screen. That is until I realized the amount of technology required to power the dock versus the amount of plastic that they use for the dock. Why does it take up so much space? It's not like if you spend $90 on a new dock, you're going to get a quality product anyways. The gap in between the plastic for the tablet to fit in is so flimsy that anytime I take my Switch dock with me, I take it to my friend's house about once a week, I have to carry it in my hands because I'm afraid that if I put it in my bag, it's going to snap. And I know what you're saying. Go ahead and just buy one of those accessories or buy one of these dongles, but I think Nintendo should have definitely gotten this right the first time around. That way I don't have to MacGyver my Switch dock into a smaller capacity or having to buy yet again another dongle in 2017. At least this problem is fixable, unlike the tablet, which I have a love-hate relationship with. I really don't like the screen, which I mentioned in my last review and a couple seconds ago. I understand Nintendo needs to cut costs, and if they're selling a product to mainly children, that they need to make a screen durable enough so they don't have to have constant replacements for this screen. But if an engineer can figure out some DIY way to replace the plastic screen with a glass screen, that would be awesome. The upside to the terrible screen is that I don't like looking at it, so I spend less time playing my Switch in handheld mode, meaning that I've never had my Switch die on me at all. Downfalls aside, this is really just kind of a complaint because I know a lot of people who only play their Switch in handheld mode. I don't know how those people do it, but they seem to have no problems playing in handheld mode. Size-wise, I think the Switch is perfect. It fits well in my backpack with a very slim case. The 720p screen is actually not a problem at all, and the touchscreen on the device works great. It feels like an actual tablet. I often find myself, if I'm like in the eShop and I need to use the keyboard, I'll take the Switch out of the dock, use the keyboard to type up what title I'm searching for, and then put it back in the dock, which oddly feels a lot like the future, and I really like using that feature. Using the Switch as a standalone tablet also works. You could very well possibly sit it down on your desk and have Hulu playing while you're doing your homework. Unfortunately, Hulu's the only video service that is allowed at the time, but throughout the future, hopefully we get support with Netflix and YouTube to turn this into a full tablet that you will not need the Joy-Con to use. Which, let's talk about those. Initially, I had a lot of great things to say about the Joy-Con. I enjoy using the Joy-Con because of the comfort that they provide my arms in terms of spacing, not so much in terms of comfort in my hand. I experience seldom discomfort after hours of play because of how small they are. The triggers feel wobbly, and they're not traditional triggers that travel. Instead, they're more like a side button. Using the Joy-Con split creates discomfort as well. It's noticeable at first, but after a few Mario Kart races, you're having so much fun that you forget that you're holding half of a controller. In fact, one of my multiple Mario Odyssey runs were completed using the multiplayer half Joy-Con, and me and my friend weren't even using the rails that were included with the system. Going solo, I've opted for using the rails that they include and buying separate grips, but they only fix the problem for about 10 minutes, and I just end up getting annoyed with them, so I just take them off and use them as is. That being said, the joysticks on the Joy-Con suck, especially for aiming in games like Splatoon 2. Luckily, Control Freak has a very easy solution that you can opt for to prevent this from being a further issue. One of my newer gripes about the Joy-Con is that I like that they feel smooth, but I don't think they feel durable at all. Whenever I'm playing games in my dorm room, I'm afraid that if I drop one of them, it's going to shatter whenever it hits the ground. And there is no joy in that con. Who writes these? I'm not sure if this next part is a Joy-Con problem or a tablet problem, but whenever I have the Switch in handheld mode, I notice that the Joy-Con feel very flimsy once they're attached onto the console. I feel as if they could snap off at any moment. So if I'm ever out playing in handheld mode and I need to scratch my nose or clean my glasses or maybe take a sip from my overpriced latte, I'll basically set the whole system down in order to complete those tasks because I don't even want to risk holding the system in one hand. Do I even need to include this part? Two of the best games that have come out in the last 5 years are Switch exclusives. I think the best way to describe the Switch's growing library is kind of like, okay, so you know how every week you get on Twitter and you're like, what's President Trump going to tweet about this time? And then he tweets something and you're just like, what the heck? Well, if you replace Donald Trump with Nintendo and you replaced his sporadic tweets with sporadic game releases and then replaced the audience's confusion with the audience's satisfaction of a new game, it's basically the same thing. In fact, after making my own Switch wish list, which is a mouthful, I looked at the numerous amount of games that I wanted and basically now have to break up any game that I want into 3 tiers that I've divided them into. I have 5 games on the Switch, and that's not a lot for me. That being said, I've never owned a console with games that were so fun that they've driven me to 100%ing each game. I haven't done it yet, but I've been trying. Breath of the Wild, Super Mario Odyssey, Mario Kart 8, and Splatoon 2 are all must-own titles. Despite the hardware problems, I endlessly recommend the Switch to people, because almost every flaw gets overlooked within the first 10 minutes because of the amount of fun that you have whenever you're just playing a Switch game. As someone who's experienced the joy of buying every latest gen console, the Switch has so far been my favorite. In 2014, my excitement for an Xbox One dropped after having to wait 2 hours for the console to update, not to mention having to wait 1 hour per game. Also, I was connected to an Ethernet. Copy and paste that story for the PlayStation 4. Speaking of which, last week I came back to my dorm room with Splatoon 2 and Snipper Clips. My roommate was sitting on his beanbag chair waiting for 2 PlayStation 4 games to update. Not install, but just update. Within the time he waited for these updates, his PlayStation 4 was connected via Ethernet, and it took so much time that I was able to install both Switch games over Wi-Fi, start playing Splatoon 2, get to rank 3 on Splatoon 2, and convince him to buy a Switch. I understand that they are different consoles and the PlayStation 4's power can graphically crush the Switch any day of the week, but that doesn't mean that waiting for a game to update doesn't suck. I felt like I was in an ad or something, like I was just waiting for Reggie to walk into the frame and say, like, make sure you buy a Switch today, kids. I'm never going to forget the first time I played the Switch. Within 15 minutes of me walking into my room to start opening up the Switch, I had already started exploring the Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild. That's what blew my mind. Within such a short amount of time, I was able to get started in Zelda. It was awesome. After about an hour, I was super hungry and went upstairs and completely forgot that I can take the Switch out of the dock and play the same exact game upstairs. It was incredible. It was almost mind-blowing to see that technology work so fluently. Transitioning into adulthood, I've always been curious if my love for gaming would start to dwindle, and that started to be true until I actually purchased the Switch. Learning how to cooperate with your friend in snipper clips, competing in Mario Kart, and exploring the open in Breath of the Wild all bring me back to when I was a kid with my first gaming experiences. If you're on the fence about buying a Switch, well, I say go ahead and hop over, because I can honestly say that the Switch is probably one of the best pieces of tech that 2017 has to offer. That's going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more tech-related content. Other than that, I'm KMTech, and I will catch you guys in the next video.